Dr. Ed Weiner, Chairman of Burlington Board of Health, and with me tonight, our Board of Health members, our Vice Chairman, David McSweeney, Member Mary Beth Welch, Andrea Sheehan, and Gail Demore, our new Board of Health member, and you'll hear more about her during my Chairman's report. Also with us tonight are Susan Luminello, our Director of Public Health, Michael Green, our Associate Director of Public Health, Christine Mathis, our Environmental Engineer, and Samantha Hardy, our Associate Health Inspector. Please note that we are live on BCAT and available for appropriate comments and questions through this video technology. And thank you for BCAT for what you do for this community, keeping us all aware, and what you do so well to keep us informed. You do an outstanding job, and we appreciate it. You were great on Election Day. Approval of minutes. I don't believe there are any minutes to approve this evening, so I guess we can move on, and we move on to the Chairman's report. Before I begin, we have a new member of the Burlington Board of Health, and I'm going to ask Gail Demore to formally introduce herself to the town as its new elected member. Gail, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Gail Demore. I was recently elected on Saturday. I just want to say thank you to Burlington for giving me the opportunity to be here, and thank you to everyone who helped me get here. I'm looking forward to helping out with all the good work that everyone's already been doing, and I'm just really excited to be here, so thank you.
Good. As I do each meeting, I want to acknowledge our professional staff, board members, and all those town departments, all of you who work for them, for your hard work and commitment to this town. It's been a long 2 years. The Board of Health has worked very hard to keep Burlington safe and well during this historic pandemic time. It's just part of what we do. And I hope the situation is getting better. I hope it's not coming back. I hear reports, and I just hope that we're not going to take a step back in where we were just a few months ago. The Board of Health is here to discuss any questions that you may have. Our website is a great resource. It's accessible to everyone, anytime. And most important, we are always just a phone call away. At this point in time, during the Chairman's report, I ask if there's anybody on the board who'd like to make any comments before we move on.
Ed? Oh, sorry, excuse me. Go ahead.
No,
Oh, thank you. I thought you were going to say.
I was going to say something,
Yeah,
but that's okay. Go first.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to say, and I don't know if we want to do this, we're calling this Citizen Time or Chairman Report. I wanted to congratulate you on your re-election. Lucky that we have you on the board. I also wanted to congratulate Gail Demore as well. I wanted to thank Gail for reaching out to every member of the board during her election process. I appreciate that. I appreciate that there's we have different ways on the board. Each member brings a different perspective to the board, and I really appreciate you reaching out to the board members. Thank you so much, and welcome.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was going to say this almost the same exact thing. I do want to welcome you. I'm looking forward to working with you. I thought you ran a really good campaign, and
Thank you.
if you bring to the board what you brought to your campaign, the town is lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have you here. And I do want to congratulate the chairman for a well-fought campaign, starting your 33rd year on the board, 34th year on the board. The town, I think, recognized the value you bring to the community, and want to congratulate you for topping the ticket as well, but really a nice campaign, so welcome back.
Thank you very much. As I have done in the past, I skip citizens' time, so I have to go back one slot. Is there anyone who is not part of our agenda who would like to speak to the board? Anybody online?
We do have one person there online. I'm not sure. HJ. I don't know if they're here for citizens' time.
Well, if you'd like to speak to the board, please, you're welcome. Speak up. I guess not, but you're welcome anyway. Thank you for coming. Permits. for Westwood Street keeping of animals. Mr. Chuck Carnell, I'm sorry. Please come up here. Yes. You're gonna be on the hot seat. You know, we want to get you on, we don't want to lay an egg here.
Chicken jokes are starting.
So, presenting the keeping of animals will be our Associate Health Inspector. Please go ahead.
Alrighty, well, it's nice to be here, it's nice to see everybody, because I haven't been here in a while. So today, Mr. Carnell is applying for 4 chickens, so I did an inspection on the property March 8th, and we looked at the abutting neighbors' lot lines, we had all the setbacks, he had enough space in his chicken coop, he plans on composting his waste in his gardens. He's gonna store his feed in the basement, and everything looked good to me, so I recommend granting the permit.
Thank you. You sent out 4 or 5 letters to abutters. Did anybody get back to you?
Nope, I didn't hear anything from anyone.
I went over and took a look yesterday, and the house is beautiful. It's purple, the house is beautiful. It has solar panels on top. It is completely fenced, as you noted. I have no objection whatsoever. Does anybody?
We want to explain your interest in the chickens, what your,
Sure.
yeah.
I did have one neighbor come over who was concerned about it, and I brought her to the back of my home and showed her the coop that I built, explained to her the rules and everything that the town has, and she seemed acceptable with that. She somehow Googled generally the rules, and she got general rules for the whole country, I guess, and not the town, but she seemed okay, so I did have one person come over. I'm just looking to do it I'm retired, it'll be like a little hobby. I was up O'Connor's Hardware, which I go to every day, and they're selling chicks, and I said to the lady at the register, is it hard to do? And she's like, oh, no, it's fun. So I'm giving it a shot. I ordered 4 chicks. I built a little coop for them. I'll see what happens. If we get an egg here or there, that'll be awesome, especially with the price of them these days. And I think I can fairly well take care of them. I was a respiratory therapist for 38 years, so I have been in the health field. I'm not up on all the rules, but I do know basic sanitary conditions, especially in hospital situations. So I have a little experience. I just need the chickens.
Well, I just want to make sure you understand, and I'm sure you do, you can't have roosters.
Right.
So I don't know if if the chicks that you've bought have been sexed.
They're supposedly all females. At O'Connor's, they said they don't sell males in the state, I guess, or at least to, regular folks.
Well, you'll know if you get a rooster.
Yeah,
Or
the
5
test
o'clock.
is 100%.
Yeah.
So I just want you to be aware. Does anybody have any other comments, or?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the permit for keeping of animals for Westwood Street.
Second.
So I have a motion, and second will be whom?
Mary Beth Beebe.
Mary Beth, I will second.
Thank you.
No other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0-0. You're all set.
Thank you very much. I'll
Thank
bring
you.
the first egg over to Andrea and Kevin's house. Oh, thank you all very much.
Thank you for
Thanks for
coming.
coming in.
I'll have the
Check.
second egg.
I hope
She
this
gets
wasn't
a
a bad
second, yeah.
experience.
No.
Good.
It wasn't too foul for you?
Interesting. No.
Well,
I have some chicken jokes too, but they're not appropriate for.
Appropriate for TV.
We're on BCAT.
he usually
He's
says
watching.
that if you really screw up, we'll pull it, so. But anyway,
I have no idea.
That's getting pretty deep on the chicken joke.
Didn't get that.
thank you for
Okay,
coming.
thank you all.
Yeah,
No,
he said thank you.
yeah.
You're welcome. Thank
You
you
will.
very much.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Thank you for
Aye,
your
Chuck.
help.
Wow, we're moving right along tonight.
Not
Reorganization.
fast enough.
All right. I think he's just so excited about being reelected.
Reorganization of the Board of Health. We need to elect a chairman and a vice chairman. I guess we do the chairman first. So do I have any motions to appoint the chairman?
So, Mr. Chairman, so I am always a proponent of, I think it's great that we get new blood in and change it up. However, I do think that we are still tracking getting out of COVID and doing a lot, and and I don't know if anybody else has any interest, but I'd be willing to take that in. But I would love to nominate you again for another year as chairman of the board.
Well, I would accept that.
I would second that nomination.
Okay, are there any other nominations from the floor? Now, I have to make sure, do I have to pass the gavel to you?
Yeah, you do, actually. Well, no, I don't think so.
No, I don't think you
so.
just have the vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
If any other discussions or nominations, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I guess I can aye, 5-0-0. Very good, thank you. Now we have nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I would like to nominate David McSweeney.
I have a nomination, David McSweeney. Do I have a
His
second?
good work.
I would second that nomination.
Second.
Listen, I'm more than, so just discussion, right? I'm more than happy to take it. I, would love to take it on, but if somebody else wants to step in, I'm happy to hand the torch over, so.
If anybody would like that?
Nope, okay.
So I have a nomination. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second by Andrea. If not, any other discussion, nominations? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Very good. Staff reports. The Associate Health Inspector, Samantha Hardy. We have her report. Do you have any, would you like to highlight anything this evening?
I guess I could, so I did a really great training last month. It was called Risk-Based Inspection Methods in Retail. It was an FDA training, and it was all about how to do risk-based inspections. It was a week-long virtual training. It was really intense, but it was really great. And it was part of our work on the grant to become standardized for FDA. So that was one thing. And the other thing, I've been studying for the registered sanitarian exam. So I'll be I signed up and I should be taking that in June.
Well, to the best. Does anybody have any questions for an Associate Health Inspector?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I do. Nice to see you, Samantha. Could you just explain a little bit of the changing of the game, Redux, the updated playbook? Could you tell me a little bit of what has changed?
Oh, so that was a training about mostly e-cigarettes.
Yep.
So it was just going over some of the things that have changed. Like, for instance, they used to be that you would buy the whole device and then have replacement pods, but now they're starting to sell these, individual disposable vaping products, so they're a lot more accessible to kids, and so I was mostly interested in seeing if there was any changes that might affect tobacco inspections. But I did end up finding out that the vaping devices can actually be considered hazardous waste if they have certain batteries or leftover nicotine. So that was something that I brought up with the environmental engineer and the director, because that might be something we want to consider for household hazardous
Accepting
waste.
this too?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, thank you. And the second, the investigation, the two Barron Park Lane. So I'm looking at the report, it showed multi-violations. When you got that violation, did it come in as that entire list, or did it increase while you were inspecting?
So typically what happens is people will come in and they have a specific complaint that they're concerned with, and that's what we go on. But when we go in to do the inspection, we ask if they want to have a full inspection or if there's anything else they want us to look at, and that tends to kind of,
It
We
was
happen to
really,
notice
it was
things.
very thorough. I was, It was very thorough, so that's why I asked. I didn't know if it was one item, so it was a very thorough investigation. It was also quite large of multiple items. And I read some of it, it said that it was a possible health or safety to the occupants if they didn't get resolved within 24 hours. Is most of those items that you identified resolved?
I haven't gone back to do a reinspection yet, but I have been in communication with the property manager who said
Okay.
that he's been working on it.
And the other piece of it, it was, is it one fine for all? It seemed like a very large,
I guess we don't typically fine for,
Yeah, they would just-
for our housing
Yep.
inspections. We can if
thought
they
I
don't,
saw
if
there
it
was
goes
a,
uncorrected.
uncorrected.
But we don't typically do a fine for it. So we write the order letter. Depending upon the violation, they have a certain period of time to correct it. Some things that's 24 hours will say, you know, you have a 24-hour time period, but that's to start working on it. So realistically, they might not be able to get a contractor in there to finish it in 24 hours. But they have to at least contact some contractors to come in and start working.
And if there was a situation, Susan, and I guess this isn't it, but if it was beyond the safety, like a habitat, it would be,
If it was something that we felt that the person couldn't live there,
Yep.
then that is a condemnation.
okay, and that's what I just
yeah,
was
issue,
reading the
and then,
multiple.
you know, I would get involved, would have to get the board involved, would have to have an emergency meeting of the board and all that.
Okay, and the
So-
fine would only apply if it's not starting to be rectified, right?
Yeah, and in the past, when we've had, you know, we've had things that went uncorrected, and what we would do would be there's different things you could do. You could go straight to the court. So I've done that before, especially in an emergency. So you would need to get injunctive relief. So for example, if somebody it was in the middle of the winter time and they weren't fixing the furnace, and the people had no heat, that's something that you could go to the court for in an emergency situation to get injunctive relief. So there's different avenues that we could use. If somebody, say, if they had, I don't know, a 30-day violation of like trash or something, we might bring them before the board. And then if they weren't correcting it, and then the board could decide, well, we're gonna issue a fine. But I've never had to issue a fine on a housing case before, and I hope I don't.
Okay, great.
We have met on the sidewalk 2 days after the complaint, called a meeting minutes and condemned the house. So we can do that. We have a 2-day, because you have to post the condemnation, and we have done that, if you remember. I think you were there, on the sidewalk, we were on the sidewalk holding a meeting.
I think, because we've had
Yeah.
some hoarding cases, which is a little bit different, right, because this is a property owner versus the owner of the building, but you run into the risk of putting somebody on the street, right,
Right.
making somebody homeless, so you have to be careful.
Exactly. And I mean, I thought it was a very thorough report. I was really impressed with the investigation. And I also was asking if, it sounds as if it was a one violation and you found multiple. So thank you. Thanks for your explanation and thanks for your thorough report.
Just to add one thing on that, just so the board knows, and Sam was gonna work on this too, because a lot of people don't know that they can call the Board of Health if they're renting and they have issues, but we're gonna work on trying to get that message out. But oh jeez, but as far as the housing cases go, I actually forgot what I was gonna say, I'm sorry.
Susan, hey,
I lost my train of
you
thought.
it sounds like my day.
So let me ask
But-
a question while you're thinking. I thought one of the interesting listings was managing bed bugs with limiting resources. I think that's amazing that they're doing webinars on that now. Is that something we can post that webinar on our website? I'm interested in hearing it.
I could go back in my email and see if they sent like a copy of the slides or the presentation, see if I can find it. If it's out there, then I can certainly send it over.
Not that I have bed bugs, but I'm interested.
No,
I'm
it was
interested
an
in.
interesting presentation.
I know I have. audience here tonight, so it's, but really, I am interested in how to handle that, because I know it's a real bad problem in some places.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, remember what? That tenants have.
Welcome to the board, Gail.
Tenants have certain rights as well, so when the Board of Health writes an order letter, they have by law certain rights, and they can withhold their rent until the violations are corrected. So that's another avenue to get landlords to correct it, because they don't want to keep these violations for any longer than it needs to be either.
No, and I know we're looking at the investigation, and the residents on, I mean, it's a big investigation, and it's a lot of violations, so, you know, thank you for protecting the applicant, so, or resident, however you want to word it, but nicely done. Thank you.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the Associate Health Inspector's report?
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
by Mary Beth, second by Andrea. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Brings us to the environmental engineer. Would you please highlight, especially since we had a household hazardous waste?
Yeah. Before I get to that, I just wanted to update you on the drainage matter at 207 Cambridge Street. They're in the process of renewing their Mass DOT connection permit. And according to DOT, that should be a fairly simple renewal. It had lapsed because they were waiting on action from the planning board and stuff like that, but that should be a fairly simple renewal. And according to them, the construction of that drainage should start sometime this spring, early summer.
Great.
And as you mentioned, we had a household hazardous waste event last.
Before we go on, would you
Yeah.
please, we have a new member here, explain to where that issue
Yeah.
is, where that drainage problem is?
So there's a property right on Cambridge Street, just if you go down the hill from the center. Used to be Burlington Auto Parts in the front. And just the layout of the building and the topography in the area, there's a lot of water that comes off that side, the side property there, and it goes right across the parking lot and into Cambridge Street. And during the winter time, sometimes there's such a volume that it actually impacts the passability, but if it freezes on Cambridge Street, it'll impact the passability of one of the lanes on Cambridge Street on that side. So we've been working with the property owner to correct that issue, and the groundwater table is very high there, so they didn't have options to, infiltrate the water on site at the property, so they're very close to a storm drain for a connection to this, able to do a connection to the stormwater system in Cambridge Street. However, Cambridge Street is a Massachusetts highway, so they needed authorization from them, and then they needed to go before the planning board, get other department comments to get site plan approval, and so they're getting their ducks in a row, and
Right, it just takes time.
yeah. So that's the issue at that property.
I see.
Thank
Thank you for that
Welcome.
explanation.
Sure. So then, as you mentioned, we had a household hazardous waste event on April 2nd, and we had 370 residents that attended, and it wasn't one of our busiest, but it was fairly busy, and I just want to thank board members and Susan and Mike for coming, and as well as, all the BVRC volunteers that helped out. We had a very well-covered day, and it ran incredibly smoothly. And then we had some new volunteers, which was nice to get them some experience, and so we can hopefully have some, more people back again. Any questions on the rest of the report?
One, unless you have one.
I have one, but I can wait.
Go ahead, please.
It's actually in regards to the hazard health, and it's more of like a discussion, if we could. It was a really nice day, and I really, I had a lot of questions for folks coming in, and I think we even discussed this a little bit during during the event. Is there room for discussion to, I know it's hard with calendars, but to maybe move the day out a little bit? And I think, I mean, we can't always know what the weather's gonna be.
Well,
Really nice.
Yes, it was.
oh, this year, you're right, it was quite windy and quite cold. The whole day I felt like I was on the top of Mount Washington.
I kept walking towards the street to find sun, but,
Yeah.
but exactly, but I also think there's two things that again, it's just always room for, discussion or opportunity to improve. So that was, and I think maybe, and this is just a perception, that a lot of folks haven't really started cleaning. It's in the being, pulling together for spring. And that was just, some folks even mentioned it to me coming in, so it prompted me to think about, those two things. Could we change the calendar date, and it can't be when Roger
No,
starts
it's
his
gotta be there.
referee, but, because I'm not doing it without him. And the second is, we've done this, I've been doing it multiple times. I get a lot of folks that come in that really want to utilize the playground, and how can we send a very nice but very clear message that it's a safety issue to have members of the community in that space, and that's really we block it, right?
Yeah.
And but to maybe give really upfront that. And if we even have to do that sign that the park is closed between these hours.
Sure.
It's just a suggestion, and it might really help the folks up front
Sure.
to prepare.
So we do reserve the entire school grounds. We reserve the building, the parking lots, and the fields. And we check in with the school, of course, with rec to make sure that there aren't any baseball games, softball games, soccer games. And we check in with youth soccer league. So we book the entire grounds, but that's a great suggestion to maybe on our posters and on our website say that, please know that the entire school grounds are closed that day. And I don't think we have that on the website or on any of our signage, but that's a good suggestion.
And I think when you stress that message, that it's a safety and a
Yeah.
concern for, the residents to be, there's hazardous materials and
Well, there's hazardous material, and there's also the traffic.
there's traffic.
Where are you gonna park to use that playground? Because the playground is right in the path of our people exiting.
We might even be, avoid them even if they didn't see that message online or whatever we communicate up front, but just something out front as well,
Like a sign.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I made a note of both,
Yeah.
to put it
And
on the
maybe-
website and a sign out front.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe reach out to the rec department, because they could probably get the message out
Yeah.
better than our signs or our.
And I don't know, the other thing we could do is, we do put our ad in all the school newspapers, our school blogs or whatever, newsletters, and maybe what we could do is ask all the schools to put that in there too, because it's gonna be mostly, people with children wanting to use the playgrounds,
That's
and
what
they
it is. We
might
try to
see that.
redirect them to other
Yeah,
sites.
that's a great idea. And as far as the date, it was early this year, but I was confined by, let's see, Passover, Easter, election, and my vendor was booked for the first weekend in May. So the only time I could do it was April 2nd, or I was into the end of May, which is quite late, and it was like the weekend before Labor Day.
I totally get that.
When
I'm a
my
project
the
manager, I'm all
next-
about dates.
May
now.
books
It's
up
not
really
easy.
fast, so I usually try to do it like the end of April, but both Easter and Passover
Yeah.
were kind of late this year, and it just constrained when I could do it to April 2nd. But I got the message, and I was freezing all day, and I was in the sun, so, last year we did it May 1st, and it worked, it was great. But I usually try to do it later, late in April. But
Just
thanks for both
suggestions.
suggestions, yeah.
And we had 370
lot
cars,
for-
which is
yeah.
not that much less than we've had in the
No.
past.
Right.
This was my, I think, 61st Household Hazardous Waste day that I worked, 61st, 61. And there were a lot of cars. However, they weren't as busy as we've been in the past. There were about less than 100 fewer. But I was noticing that the amount of material within
yeah.
the community is getting less and less. And I think we have really cleaned Burlington. I think that people people have brought so much of the quote-unquote old stuff that we're not seeing again. Every once in a while, we see some DDT, we see some chloridane, we see some really terrible things. We don't see them anymore. We see half-filled cans of oil paint and some insecticide and some things that people don't want
I
anymore.
had a vacuum, but I didn't pass it back to you guys, so.
But for the most part, I think much of the real horrendous stuff is out. I think we're still getting material, and material that needs to be out of the environment, but the horrible stuff is not coming in anymore.
Do we see a bigger I'm trying to think too, do we see a bigger volume when you do the second health hazard? I mean,
There's
is
not-
it consistently the same?
There's not that much of a pattern to it. It's very odd. You know, the most cars we've ever had since, I think this was my 19th or 20th. And I went back and looked at our spreadsheet, you know, Susan's had
500 ones,
a
right?
few more than that. Two events ago, we had, or maybe it was 3 events ago, we had 585 cars. And that was the most we've had in 20 years, or as far back as the spreadsheet goes.
I think that was the one we had the double lanes.
Yeah.
In the middle of.
That was,
the
that
road.
was
Real
tough.
traffic problem.
Yeah.
That was tough.
Yes, it was.
And we made, for out back, we made a lot of traffic changes to accommodate increased traffic if we get that more. And I think that surge was due to COVID and people having time to be at home and clean out their basements and in their garage and whatnot, because it was right, I think it was our second event during COVID that we had those numbers. But typically, the numbers are about 450, so. But then, there's really not a pattern as to whether spring or fall is more. There's not one that I can see, but.
I just had a thought about the communication piece.
Yep.
When you do the reverse phone call, you could include the fact about the
Oh,
place
that's,
not being
yeah,
closed.
that's a good idea.
Oh, that's good, very good.
Mr. Chair, I just have
Yes.
2 questions, please.
You all done?
I am, thank you.
So Christine, what's up with Desktop Metals
Yes.
with the chemical
Yeah,
reaction?
thank you.
So that was actually a very small and well, in my opinion, well responded to event. They were actually doing an experiment with, to see if they could, they were adding a polymer to one of their chemicals to see if they could get better use of it in the equipment, and that's the best way to explain it. And what happened was there was a slight equipment failure, and the heating element stayed on while they were doing the reaction. And then the attendant noticed it and turned off the heating element, but it was still warm, and it caused an exothermic reaction, which caused the actual chemicals to continue to heat beyond what the heating element was supposed to do. So the attendant, or the lab chemist called, got a supervisor. They immediately called the fire department. They immediately implemented their emergency response plan, evacuated the building, contained so the reaction happened in a small reaction vessel within the lab hood. Nothing escaped the lab, nothing escaped anything. And the fire department responded, and they called in the state emergency response team, who also responded. And by the time different people making decisions from the fire department and the state emergency response team all arrived, the reaction had started to dissipate and the temperature went down to something.
So and that was more a question. I mean, Desktop Metals has been around for a while. They've been a good corporate citizen, and they follow guidelines. I was curious if they followed the protocol, and we
Yeah,
almost
they
used
did.
it like an emergency.
They did. They followed their emergency response plan. They followed it, and in response to it, they treated it like a near miss, like you would under OSHA standards, which means potential for severe hazard. And they went through the whole review of their emergency response plan and how they responded. And if any additional training was necessary, they made appropriate operational changes to their standard operating procedures and retrained their people to not do that.
You know, that's success.
It is.
was.
That's-
It really
that's my
was.
point,
That's a
right?
success,
It was-
and you should take that as part of the success. We had them in here many times.
Yep.
They're really cutting level technology in which they take powders and they create three-dimensional objects for NASA and for the military. And we had them in there because there weren't too many of these types of
No,
companies
they were-
around the world.
No, and
And we put all of these safeguards in place. So if people ask, what does the Board of Health do when it comes to these novel technologies? Well, we research them. Our environmental engineer spends a lot of time. In fact, we all went there. We helped them put together an emergency response protocol, and guess what? It worked.
yeah, it was great. It was.
And as we expand to the biotech arena in the town, I mean, it's important that, I mean, we certainly don't want these accidents to happen, but it's important to know that the plans that we've put in place and that we've forced these companies to abide by are working, right? And hopefully that gets it, because, you know, the best part of that disaster was a non-disaster, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that's because of the hard work that it takes between the company, between us, between the fire department, working together to ensure that as we move forward and bring more biotechnology into the town, into the community, that, you know, there is limited concerns and minimized concerns because we have the appropriate staff in place and the appropriate level of oversight in place.
And, you know, we have had fatalities in this community, but they were with the restaurants.
Yeah.
Hasn't been with the
Yeah.
biotech, although really, Desktop Metal isn't considered a biotech in that sense. And we'll come back to that later when I speak, when I have something for the Associate Director.
I have one more question, I'm sorry.
Please, go ahead.
276 Cambridge Street, there was a drainage issue or something, or was it
It was-
a
it-
non-issue?
It was a non-issue. It turned out that the complainant thought that the puddles on the side street were from the rooftop drains of that building, which I think is empty right now.
Yeah.
And it turns out that it was a melting snow pile.
Gotcha. Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
No more further questions, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else? I'm done. Do I have a motion to approve the environmental engineer's report?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Sweeney, second by Mary Beth. All in favor? Aye. 5-0. Thank you so much. Next is the Associate Director of Public Health. Does anybody, would you like to please highlight anything?
Oh, I'd like to, excuse me, congratulate you on your reelection, and Gail, welcome to the board, your election. I'd like to highlight, Christina and I were actually out to 2 IBC meetings, March 23rd, for Cambridge and Protogene. So I think the work that preceded my coming to Burlington is certainly starting to bear fruit with more biosafety coming in. So we've been working diligently on streamlining our application review process, setting together a biosafety inspection checklist, and putting together kind of the IBC community rep training program. So that's certainly been keeping us busy.
Are there any questions? Well, I do. I have just a comment. I went through all of our documents for this meeting. Sarepta, Desktop Metals, Protogene, Cambridge Pharmaceuticals, Triumvirate, Stilla. Now, is Stilla, I didn't recognize that name. Is that?
They were applying for a special permit, or wondering if they needed a special permit. I believe they're just a digital PCR diagnostic lab that was coming in.
And Millipore. So in just 2 weeks, we have been dealing with 7 loosely defined biotech companies. So I think the community is wondering what's really going on in this community. Are we really becoming a hub of science in the Northeast? We surely are. And in just 2 weeks, there were 7 companies that we dealt with, 7 scientific companies. So we really did need and really do need the staff that we had as especially the associate director, which is the newest staff member on our team. So for people who are wondering, I will continuously do this. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve the Associate Director of Public Health's report.
So moved?
Motion
Second.
by Mary Beth, second by Andrea. All in favor? Aye, that's 5-0. Now, the Director of Public Health is last, and her report includes the supervisory nurse, which is Christine Pollock, and the health agent, which is Marlene Johnson, who both submitted reports. So I'd like to take those first. Is there anything that our director would like to highlight in those reports?
No.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions from either Marlene's, who is our health agent, or Christine Pollock, who's our supervisory nurse?
Just on the flu vaccines, are we good? We move forward with those orders?
Yep.
and That we talked about I think it was the last meeting, maybe 2 meetings ago.
Yeah, we're all set. We've reserved them. And.
We get them in September?
Yeah, we get a certain amount shipped by end of September, a certain amount by end of October. So I'll plan the flu clinic around the same time that we usually do, towards the end of October. And just see if anything changes this year. I mean, I don't know we do have COVID booster vaccine available. We have some doses. And now that the CDC has come out and said that, get another dose, we're giving those doses away. We set up another clinic in May. And we have a limited amount of doses, but we really
You
haven't
have
been
both.
giving a whole lot away.
You have Moderna and
No, we just have the
Pfizer.
Moderna.
Moderna.
Yeah. So it's about, I think it's 18 doses that we have. And we're gonna try to give that away, but there's a lot of health departments that still have doses of Moderna or Pfizer and haven't been able to give it away, so.
Is there an expiration date on it? Is there like stuff?
Yeah, ours is what we have right now is the end of May. So if we don't give it away in May, it's gonna get wasted, and it's one vial, and once you open the vial,
Right, you have to use it.
you have to use the rest of it. So we're trying to, set up appointments for the beginning of May, and we'll just open the vial, no matter how many appointments we have, because it's gonna expire anyways.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions on those two? I have just a comment. I did talk to Christine Pollock, and first, she has been working very closely with the school department. I know that she has to provide vaccines to some of our new Americans who are at this high school, and it looks like that program is working out fine.
That's under our Vaccine for Children program.
And that has been working really well. I also want to note that she's been working on the health fair. The health fair is coming up in May.
Yep.
Do I have it right?
May
Mike's-
21st.
Yep.
The 21st of May,
Rain delay on the 22nd if
and
needed.
it's going to be at the town common.
Yep.
And she has been in contact with Dana Farber and other companies to come in and provide resources. But I just want to call out how helpful our fire department is. They're always there. They help us out. They don't charge us money. They send an ambulance. And thank you to Chief Patterson. I appreciate that, and I'll discuss that with you in the future. I have thanked you many times for partnering with us. And we do have an agreement with them around education for the community, and we're one of the first in the community, first to do that. So with that, is there any
Hey,
question?
Actually, I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Go backwards. I heard an ice cream truck the other day,
Okay.
I did too.
and makes me think about, we have the annual inspections, right?
Yeah.
Food trucks
Yeah,
that
they need-
happen.
Food, yep, and they
I
come.
know the answer to this, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, so, I believe Marlene's, I think we have 1 or 2 ice cream trucks. Which is a little bit different from the food trucks, but, she does inspections, or Sam just did one, the other day, right, for a food truck. So they're starting to come in now for the renewals for the.
Which I thought was early,
food
the ice
truck
cream truck I
permits.
thought was early, it's
Yeah.
kinda cold.
And we we still have the police requirement too.
Yeah,
That they
for
have to be quarried.
Yes, yeah.
That each person on the food truck, whether it be ice cream or whatever, have to be quarried. And so, and that's, you have to coordinate that with the police department.
Mr. Chair, can we go back to?
Sure.
Yeah. It's actually in regards to the health fair, and you may have said this in a previous meeting, but how are we communicating the agenda items? I know we did a flyer for Hazard Health Day, but besides our social media, Christine made a good point about the school blog. Do we distribute that?
Well, actually, I just saw an email, the schools no longer have the blogs that they used to have.
Yeah,
They have like a weekly update.
yeah, they do,
that
weekly
So
update.
they're gonna put it on their weekly
Okay.
update. But we use the regular channels that we normally use, that weekly update, we use the electric sign, we put posters around, we put it in the paper, we put it on social media, we go to BCAT. I mean, we try to use all, the patch, you try to use all the avenues that we normally do to get the word out about the health fairs as other events that we have as well. And the buzz, yeah, the buzz.
The Burlington
Yeah,
buzz.
and just one other thing on the fire department too, they got the safe house for us, so it's kind of like, it's like a big trailer, and you can walk through it, and I think it's like education on,
Smoke
smoke,
inhalation,
right?
yep.
Yeah, so that's something new and different that,
I think we have a lot of new, vendors this year, a lot of new, like, topics
Yeah.
that we normally did. And it's increased each year, right? It's increased the,
Yeah, and I think we have over 40 now tables, right? And, yeah, that's about what we had at the last one, about 40, but, yeah, but it's gonna be outside, so it'll be a little bit different, hopefully
Yeah,
we have
it
good weather.
it might be hard too to, because you do kind of try to do an estimate of a count of how many residents.
That's gonna be,
It's gonna be
but
different.
that will be difficult, we're still
Yeah.
gonna do the free raffle tickets,
Oh,
and we're
good
still gonna
idea.
do it
So
the
we'll get
same
some
way,
count.
so we'll get an idea, at least how many people picked up the raffle tickets.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the outside.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were when we mentioned it as a health day. Yep.
Logistically, it's gonna be more difficult to get people there and set up, so, we're kind of trying to work through
Is
that.
there discussions at all about parking? It's just, there's always things in the common, but
Well, the thing, the concerning thing is the exhibitors getting their items onto the common. And, you know, the idea of them driving on and off the common, we're trying to set up something where they can do a drop-off. We can get volunteers to help us, the volunteers can help them carry things from their vehicle to the common, then they can they can leave their stuff, drop their stuff, go park their car, and come back, and then go back with a volunteer to help them bring the stuff to the table, rather than having all these cars driving onto the common. So, because these Celebrate Burlington does that, but they usually Celebrate Burlington, it's kind of like the same vendors, everybody's kind of used to it. They've never done an
Right,
event
they
on the
need a
common
little
before, so,
holding.
yeah, so, I don't know, we'll just have to see how it goes.
Sounds exciting.
Maybe some
Yeah.
extracurricular from the high school students to volunteer in. No detention today, but
We have the
Burlington Reserve Corps,
Yeah,
400 people who'll turn out. At least they have a couple hundred who might help out. Your report now, do you have anything you'd like to highlight?
I think just one thing, one of the things that I've been working on, and I think I mentioned this before, was the social media plan. And I think it's really important to get the word out, get information out about what the Board of Health does. And I've been trying to think of different ways that I can do that. So I'm tying that into the newsletter. So we have the BVRC newsletter, and then we have, for that, I'm asking the staff to contribute to that, either like in an article, and then we can get that on social media. And I'm also asking the staff if they have things going on to create posts for Facebook and Twitter, so we can get all of that on social media. We're connecting with the different, like the Burlington Buzz or the Burlington Patch. I notice our household hazardous waste, I took a picture of 3 of our volunteers and I put it on the social media, it ended up on the front page of the paper. So they are seeing what we're doing. I think a lot of it is through the social media. So if you want to follow us, you can go to the burlington.org website. The Board of Health, there's icons for the Facebook and Twitter. It's also on burlingtonmrc.org. You can hit those icons and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And we're putting all kinds of, and one other note after this meeting, I'd like to get a picture of the new board so I can put that on the social media as well. But I'm trying to tie all of this in to kind of get the word out more about the different things that we do and have the staff contribute as well, because they're all working hard, and a lot of times the residents don't know, everything that we're doing, so.
That's great.
Now, do you have anything for your report that you'd like?
That was it.
That
yeah.
was it, okay, we jumped around. Does anybody have any questions?
Just one, actually, it's not really necessarily about the report, but just a follow-up item on, it was a while ago that we met with Concom about the new regulations as it pertains to, I guess, stormwater,
Yeah.
right? They were gonna go away and kind of do a draft of a proposed regulation and bring it by to us. Did they ever do that, or?
It's my understanding that they are not going to bring it to this upcoming town meeting, but will be bringing it to the next one, am I right?
September, yep.
September.
That's the latest update I have.
I thought they were gonna share it with the Board of Health, or at least share the changes with the Board of Health, just in case there was any changes or concerns with overlap of regulations.
And I'm not sure of the postponement, whether or not that was because they were still working on it.
Okay.
So I haven't seen any changes
can-
to it. Can you,
I can look at what the last one that we got
Yeah.
from them.
but I would imagine that they're still gonna be working on it, and then they'll still
Yeah.
have some upcoming changes.
It would be good, maybe, I don't know if it's, it's your call, I guess, but maybe a subcommittee meeting again, once they finalize the draft, just to make sure that we all are aligned, that
Yeah.
There's not a conflict between the regulations and
I'll call
over management.
I'll call the chairman.
Yeah, that'd be great.
One other thing that the board should be aware of too, and I'm not sure if this is coming, I think this is still coming up at the May town meeting. Christine, let me know if I'm wrong. The planning board was coming up with draft regulations on having a 2-foot of separation requirement between the bottom of a foundation and the seasonal high groundwater table. So in other words, when you build a house or put in, was it things like tennis courts, or was it just houses?
I'll have to
It
go
was
back and
just
look at the last
houses.
language. I think they have it worded as basement, slab, or lowest point of the structure has to be at least 2 feet of separation from seasonal high groundwater, and seasonal high groundwater has to be determined by a licensed soil evaluator.
Yeah, and so we had a meeting with them to talk about this because the Board of Health was in this regulation, and what I said is that I don't think the Board of Health should be in this regulation just because we're soil evaluators. It really is not something that we would be able to do, to go out and witness test pits for this type of thing. I think that would be upon the builder would need to kind of take that responsibility to get a licensed soil evaluator to determine where seasonal high groundwater is. So that's just to make you aware, that was just another thing that was coming
Was
up at
it
town
just
meeting.
for houses?
Really not anything that we need to be involved in,
Yeah, I would agree.
yeah.
Yep, I agree. But was it just for houses or other?
Any structure.
That's
Any
what I thought.
structure.
Okay, thank you.
So it's, and you're correct, it's the responsibility is on the builder to hire somebody to determine, licensed soil evaluator to determine seasonal high groundwater, and then that has to be checked by the building department before the building permit will be issued, which is it's a good step, I think.
Okay. Does anybody else have any? I put a number. First of all, our budget was approved.
Yes.
Our budget was approved, so everyone should know that. It'll be going next to town meeting. The next is something we're going to talk about, it looks like. We're scheduled for next meeting, and that is a multi-dimensional issue around mosquitoes. And first, you're gonna update us with what's going on, or is it the environmental engineer?
I will, yeah.
You'll be updating us as what the state is doing with mosquitoes, and how we have to weigh health, nuisance area, and something which has come up big time in this community. We have a number of apiaries in this community, and those are beekeepers, and how what we do and what independent applicators are doing that has been hurting the bees in this community, and they're so important. So we could talk about that at the next meeting. You know, we do not have Eastern equine encephalitis in this. We have not had it. West Nile, we could talk a little bit about the nuisance effect, but for the most part, I'm trying to convince one of the local beekeepers to come in and talk about the issues that they're having in this community, where for the most part, not the Board of Health and our mosquito program, not our Eastern Middlesex mosquito program causing them problem, but independent applicators who are spraying the area with pyrethrin and killing all their hives, which happened last year. So we're gonna talk a little bit about this. I'm gonna try to get one particular beekeeper in town who has hives on Wynn Street to come in and talk about it. He's very eloquent. And that will be on our next, tentatively on our next agenda. So with that, could I have a motion, please, to approve the Director of Public Health report?
Motion.
Motion by Andrea, second by
Second.
Mary Beth. All in favor?
Aye.
Which brings us to the end of the meeting. It's so nice to have a new member.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, and call us anytime. And it's nice to be back. And last, before I adjourn, I will keep the tradition. Please be well, please be safe, and please wash your hands. It's probably the most important thing that you can do. Thank you, Dr. Saltzman. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Gail Demore, second by David Sweeney. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Good night, everybody. Be well, be safe. Good night.
Good night.